Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz guitarist Charlie Ballantine. He opened up about his new 2021 CD Reflectionsintrospection, the music of Thelonious Monk. After graduating from the Jacobs School of Music under the direction of David Baker, he relocated to Indianapolis and quickly developed a name for himself with a string of high-energy performances at clubs like the Jazz Kitchen and the Chatterbox Jazz Club. We caught him while he was on the road for a tour that will culminate in New York City at the end, and it's full of great stories. Enjoy.
Thanks for calling and reaching out, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for taking a minute out. Man, what a great album. You know, that's the thing that's always synonymous with the world of jazz is, you know, everybody reimagines standards and all of these iconic sounds, but, you know, it's very rare that you hear Monk down on guitar, so it was a very refreshing listen. Up front, I just want you to know that.
Oh, thanks so much. It was a fun challenge.
Yeah, I bet it was. I mean, anything involving Monk is a challenge. Even watching that movie Eastwood made, it kind of plays with your brain a little bit. So,
no kidding, yeah.
But at any rate, you know, before we get into how you constructed this and kind of what went into the artistic approach to the album, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, which, you know, a month and a half, 2 months ago, we thought, oh, man, we're coming out. You know, things are opening up, and, you know, things still are, but this is coming out during a time where a lot of clubs have closed, a lot of clubs were not open, communication with the fans was limited. So how refreshing is it to have this avenue towards the fans?
It's great. You know, we're on tour right now, which is, you know, partially why I'm in my car, but you know, it's been just awesome. And we didn't, when we were making this album, we didn't anticipate, you know, we were just making it. We were like, maybe this will be a live stream release, who knows. But I'm so glad we get to present this music for people, for audiences all over the place. And, you know, we worked hard on it, and it was, like I said, it was just this fun challenge that we took under during the pandemic. So to get to present it really does mean a lot.
So I guess that's my follow-up. You know, a lot of things, as much as the pandemic's been bad, I consistently hear silver linings or things that were like Bob Ross happy accident moments. You know, it almost seems like people are doing things that they would have never done if this pandemic didn't happen. So did this idea, this creation kind of come to light because of this extreme circumstance the entire planet's living through?
Yeah, it was. I don't know if it could have happened if I didn't have, you know, 9 hours a day to work on music, which I had for over a year. You know, and we had a baby in March of 2020. So for like 8 months, my life was, I wanted to really pursue some music that had always terrified me, you know, composers like Monk or Wayne Shorter, or, you know, just things that I'd always avoided really digging into in the past. And I sat there with a baby on the ground on a blanket, just learning Monk tunes for 8 months. And it really was like it was a horrible time in the world, but it was like a really, really beautiful time in my life, you know, that I'll always kind of look back on as like, you know, I had my firstborn, and I tried to learn Monk's whole catalog, and I like really, really progressed as a person during that time.
Almost sounds like you were on Galapagos Island, very Darwinian right there with the beauty and the and the tragedy. So what do you ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, there's always there's approaches to albums where you can live within a bubble, do it for yourself, you do it for the audience. But I guess ultimately, what do you want the listener that has a plethora of choices out there that downloads or buys this to get from this experience?
There have been so many incredible Monk tribute albums, you know, and I found that was part of the fun for me, was digging into the people who had covered Monk, not just Monk himself, but the huge catalog of tributes. And you know, my hope when doing this, it was partially just to work on myself as a musician and expand my harmonic knowledge and what I could do on the instrument. But also I wanted to add something that hadn't been done. And I don't even know what that was, or if I had anything in mind, but just when people listen to this, my hope is that, like, oh, you know, I love Monk. I've heard a lot of Monk covers, but I haven't heard it like this. You know, even if it's just one tune or or one moment in one tune. I hope there's something that we did that hadn't been done before.
So let's kind of go back to the beginnings of your artistic journey. Where were you born and raised? Where did all this begin for you?
I was born in Indianapolis, and I've lived all over Indiana, through my youth. But I was always kind of an Indianapolis guy. My dad always lived there and had record stores and guitar stores on the north side of Indianapolis. So I grew up, knowing all these incredible jazz musicians that, were a lot older than me. I was, 10, 12 years old, getting to hang out with people that, I still to this day consider heroes of mine. But so I was kind of just born into this. My dad always had great jazz playing around the house. A lot of Wes Montgomery, a lot of Grant Green, a lot of Monk, a lot of John Scofield, and so that was kind of the beginning for me. I was early teenager when I picked up a guitar, and I just remember hitting a chord and thinking, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life.
What was the first live show you saw that really blew you away?
Oh gosh, that's tough. My dad lived in Nashville for a short period of time, and I was probably 15, 16, and the first time I really ever remember seeing something that totally blew me away, musically or on guitar, was at a place called Robert's Western World down there, and it's kind of home to the young guitar player hotshots, that Nashville breeds. And there's a guy named J.D. Simo who's doing amazing things, kind of in the blues, rock, kind of the Joe Bonamassa circle of guitar and music. So I saw him when he was about 18 or 19 at this bar in Nashville, and it was the first time I really remember seeing something that I didn't know was possible on the instrument or in music in general.
So was always music for you? Is it a foregone conclusion based on your upbringing and what was going on around you, or did you have other dreams of what you wanted to do?
I pushed back on it a bit. I thought music, I just always wanted it to be this fun thing and this world where, anything was possible. So I didn't want to go to music school, and I went to Indiana University for journalism. About a year into that, I was just hanging out at the music school all the time and with music school guys, and so I ended up, auditioning down there. And I thought if I'm going to go to college and I'm going to spend this money, I need to be playing music. I did kind of push back for a minute, but it just seemed like the right decision. Once I figured out I didn't like reading and writing papers that much.
So, the one thing about being a musician is that you really kind of pass the baton on, and those that have been around for a little while have played with some big, heavy names. And what have you learned from big shots and, luminaries that you've played around that you in turn give to younger players that are kind of starting out and kind of helping them find their way?
I owe pretty much everything I do, whether it's musical or booking a gig or just how to act on the bandstand, to playing with older guys that have done this for years, and I've considered great mentors. And in Indianapolis, Rob Dixon's a guy that I've played with since I moved up here, and he's an incredible tenor player, and he's kind of the jazz mayor of Indianapolis, if you will. And so I try, and he's a very kind person. He's very understanding of younger guys not knowing etiquette. So I try and just adopt that mentality as much as I can, and to have that level of patience. When I'm dealing with someone, it doesn't seem like that long ago that I was always the youngest person on the bandstand, and now I'm looking around in my 30s, like now I'm often the oldest. I'm playing with these incredible young players, and my hope is that just from being around me, someone who's played a lot more gigs than them, even from a non-musical perspective, that they learn something about, how to act on a bandstand, how to be professional, how to do a gig, in a lot of different contexts. And, I just hope osmosis kind of does its duty and rubs off on them a little bit.
You're in a position as a professional musician of being able to wake up every day and you can create something that people enjoy listening to. So my question is, overall, what's the best part of being a professional musician for you?
I think I originally got into this because I just never I love music and I never wanted a real job. I get to wake up every day and look at my calendar and say, what friends am I hanging out with tonight? At the Chatterbox Jazz Club, or I just get to hang out with my friends and make music, and I'm so lucky to be in a position where people actually pay me money to do that, to just have fun with my friends on a bandstand. So that's every day, I try and remind myself what a gift this is, that I get to do this with the people I love, for people I love, and I couldn't do anything else. I really couldn't ever have a real job after enjoying this for over a decade.
In a very, very plaintive and simple way, why do you love jazz?
I always loved kind of the complexity and the challenge it presents, not just as a musician but a listener. It really beautiful, but it's complex, and you almost have to educate yourself as a listener, just as much as a musician, which was always interesting to me because there's so much spontaneity and creativity, and you can hear, Wes Montgomery play a blues 100 times, and it's always going to be completely different, each time, even if it's the same blues head. So, things like that. I started in the blues and rock thing like most guitar players. I was a big Hendrix, Jeff Beck, Stevie Ray kind of guy, and the level of spontaneity and just wanting to be more and more creative harmonically just kind of led me to this world of jazz.
So if you could get into a time machine, when we get off the phone, it pulls up in front of your house, a Jazz DeLorean, if you will, and you could punch in the digits and go anywhere and see anybody in the history of jazz, where are you going to go? Who are you going to see? And who would you want to talk to when they get off stage?
Oh man, that's tough. I probably wouldn't mind being a fly on the wall. Back to being from Indianapolis, Wes Montgomery's our guy. That Smoking at the Half Note session with and the story is it's Wynton Kelly's band, and Wes was just in town and came to the club and ended up playing a couple shows with them. And I think, for me, and I've heard Pat Metheny and John Schofield and Mike Stern all say that record that's the record. That's the Desert Island record if you're a jazz guitar player. So, yeah, I would have to say definitely Smoking at the Half Note, which I don't know what year that was. It was probably in the 50s. And I would love to talk to Wes, about Indianapolis, and his family's still around town, and I've gotten to know them, pretty well. But it would be really cool to get to know him and why he stayed in Indianapolis, and just how he became Wes Montgomery.
So everyone has an idea, a perception of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of who you are. Who do you think you are?
Oh man, that's a deep one. I don't know. I try and be certain of that at times, and for years I identified as a jazz guitar player. This has been my life, just releasing records, touring, and playing as much as I can. And then I had a kid, and now I feel like I'm a dad, and that's above anything musical at this point. And each decade kind of brings a new phase, and I have no idea who I'll think I'll be in 10 years. But that's the nature of being a musician, and the nature of this music. It's evolution and constant growth, and always kind of constantly changing. And that's what I hope to just still be growing, still be getting better as a person and as a musician in 10 years.
Final question. You're obviously on tour. I find this part of talking, it used to be kind of rote to say, where are you at? What's going on? How where are you touring? But right now there's a special resonance to this. Tell me right now where you're at, where you're traveling to, maybe your itinerary as the world thankfully opens up a little bit more for live jazz.
Yeah, we actually have a day off here. We're back in Indianapolis Just got back into town, and we're headed to the Jazz Estate in Milwaukee on Thursday, and then we do Lexington and Cincinnati, and then we're headed out to the East Coast to do some dates, upstate New York, Baltimore, somewhere in Virginia, and then New York City is where we're ending it at the Rockwood Music Hall.
Oh, man. Hallelujah. Have a great tour, man. Hey, thank you for opening up. Thanks for the music, and good luck with the tour and the new album, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I'm glad you liked it, and I can't thank you enough for playing it out there. Hopefully we make it out to Kansas City at some point. It would be great to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview. We give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Indianapolis, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Charlie for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at YouTube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.